Okay, let's just jump right in. We're about to talk about a really fundamental shift in design, something that's happening pretty much everywhere thanks to AI. We're moving way beyond just screens and buttons here and into this whole new world called interpretive design.
For decades, the job of a designer was pretty clear. It was all about guidance. Think about it. A well-placed button, a super clear layout, a logical flow, all of it was there to make your choices easier, more intuitive. Design was basically a helpful guide, holding your hand.
But that's just not the world we live in anymore. The role has completely flipped. Design isn't just about guiding our attention now. In so many of the systems we use every single day, it's actually about making the decision for us. And that, right there, is a massive change with some pretty profound implications.
So how in the world did this happen? Well, it all started when AI really stepped onto the scene. Because now, before we even see a screen or tap a single button, the AI system has already made a bunch of crucial judgments on our behalf.
Just think about what happens when you open up a social media feed or a product page. Before you see anything, the system has already decided what to show you, what's going to get that prime real estate at the top, and what gets buried or hidden completely. The interface you see, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. The real decisions have already been made for you way down deep.
All of this can feel a little random, right? Or maybe even like some kind of strange magic. But it's not. There's a very specific process happening behind the curtain, a process of interpretation that we really need to get our heads around.
We've all been there, haven't we? You ask an AI the same exact question twice, maybe just minutes apart, and you get two totally different answers. It's confusing. So what is actually going on here?
Well, here's the thing. It isn't a bug, and it's definitely not random. What's really happening is that the system is actively interpreting your request every single time.
See, the AI is constantly making what you could call meaning decisions. So for a designer, this is your new sandbox. You have to start asking questions like, what does our system assume the user's intent really is? Which piece of context is it deciding matters the most? What patterns is it generalizing from? And maybe more importantly, which signals is it deciding to just ignore? These aren't just UI choices anymore. They are fundamental judgments about meaning itself.
And that whole process, shaping how an AI makes sense of the world, that is exactly what we're talking about when we say interpretive design.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Because when we're working at this level, the things we traditionally think of as the pillars of design, clarity, usability, even how pretty something looks, they're just not the primary concern anymore. We're dealing with something much, much deeper.
So interpretive design is basically this hidden structure. It's the framework that literally defines what counts as a user's intent, what's considered relevant, and what a good outcome even looks like in the first place. This means your job as a designer now includes setting the principles that guide these interpretations. You're basically writing the AI's rulebook.
Okay, so if that's where the real rules are being written, it leads to a pretty uncomfortable truth for a lot of designers. Focusing only on that surface layer, on the user interface, just isn't gonna cut it anymore. Not even close.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? You can have the most beautiful, slick, user-friendly interface in the entire world, but if the interpretation engine underneath is flawed, you're not just failing to solve the problem, you could actually be making things worse.
The real danger is lurking just beneath the surface. You could have a system with a biased interpretation, meaning it's tilted because of the data it learned from. It might collapse context, stripping away all the nuance a human would naturally pick up on. Or it could be running on invisible assumptions that neither you nor your users are even aware of. Polishing the UX at that point is like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house with a totally cracked foundation. It just hides the real damage.
So, what does this all mean for designers? Well, it points to a brand new role, and honestly, a whole new layer of responsibility in this AI-driven world.
Now, I get it. The natural reaction for a lot of designers at this point is to kind of take a step back and say, whoa, this sounds like a job for a data scientist, or isn't this an engineering problem? And you know what? That hesitation is totally understandable. This stuff is new and it's complex.
But here's the catch. When designers step back, it creates a vacuum. Because those critical decisions about meaning, intent, and relevance, they are still going to be made, whether a designer's in the room or not. And when they're made without that deep focus on the human on the other end, the risks go way, way up.
So, here's the new mandate, plain and simple. The moment a system starts interpreting meaning, the idea of being neutral goes right out the window. Responsibility begins right there. For designers, this is your call to action, to get involved in those conversations about data and models and outcomes long before anyone's even thinking about pixels.
So I want to leave you with a few questions to chew on. If you work with these systems, start by asking this. What does my system actually think a user's intent is? Not what they click on, but what it truly thinks they mean.
Next, think about this. Which user contexts, which of those little nuances, are being amplified by the system? And maybe, more importantly, which ones are being totally ignored, flattened out, or just completely erased?
And what about transparency? Can a person using your product actually understand why the AI made the decision it did? Or is the whole thing just a complete black box?
And finally, maybe the most powerful question of them all. Could a different, a better, a more thoughtful interpretation of what the user wanted have led to a completely different, and maybe a much better, outcome? If these questions feel a little uncomfortable, well, that's probably a good sign that they now belong firmly in the world of design.